The modern age often presents itself as an era of abundance. Technology has multiplied harvests. Transportation moves goods across oceans in days. Warehouses overflow with grain while markets glow with color and choice. Yet hunger persists on a massive scale. Millions live with empty plates not because the earth refuses to provide, but because systems decide who may access what already exists. At the center of those systems stands finance. Banks have become the invisible architects of scarcity in a world that produces more than enough. Their influence rarely appears on the surface, yet it reaches into soil, labor, policy, and daily survival. Banks do not grow food, transport food, or cook food. Their power lies elsewhere. They decide who receives credit and under what conditions. They shape the rules that govern trade, debt, and currency. These rules determine whether food remains close to where it is grown or is shipped far away to satisfy distant demand. When people ask how hunger can exist alongside abundance, the answer often leads back to money and the institutions that manage it. Agriculture depends on time. Seeds are planted months before harvest. Weather cannot be rushed. Soil requires care across seasons. Banks, however, are built around shorter cycles of return. Loans must be repaid on schedule regardless of rain or drought. Interest accumulates regardless of pests or price collapse. This mismatch between natural rhythms and financial timelines creates constant pressure on farmers. For small farmers, the pressure often becomes unbearable. Across much of the world, farmers borrow to survive between planting and harvest. They borrow for seed, equipment, water access, and storage. Banks evaluate these farmers not as food providers but as risk profiles. A single failed season can turn a loan into a trap. When repayment fails, land is seized or sold. Control shifts from families to corporations backed by larger financial power. The land continues to produce, yet its purpose changes. Food for nearby communities gives way to crops chosen for export and profit. This shift is central to modern hunger. Land that once supported diverse local diets is redirected toward monoculture crops that travel well and sell high on international markets. Coffee, cocoa, sugar, soy, and palm oil replace grains, vegetables, and legumes. These exports earn currency needed to service debt. Banks encourage this pattern because it creates predictable revenue streams. The cost is paid by those who no longer control what grows on their own soil. As export-focused agriculture expands, local food prices rise. Communities that once relied on nearby farms must now buy imported staples. These imports are priced in global markets influenced by speculation and currency shifts. A drought in one region or a policy change in another can raise prices thousands of miles away. Hunger appears suddenly, even when local fields remain green. The link between production and consumption has been severed by finance. Debt at the national level deepens this problem. Many countries carry large obligations to international lenders. Servicing this debt becomes a priority enforced through financial pressure. Governments reduce spending on food programs, rural support, and price stabilization. These cuts are often described as necessary reforms. In practice, they remove buffers that once protected the poorest citizens. When food prices rise, there is no cushion left. Banks and financial institutions often influence these national policies through lending conditions. Market liberalization is encouraged. Protective tariffs are removed. State support for farmers is reduced. Food systems are open to global competition before local producers are ready to compete. Large foreign-backed firms enter and dominate. Small producers disappear. Food availability becomes dependent on global supply chains that favor efficiency over resilience. Speculation in food commodities adds another layer of instability. Grain markets were once designed to help farmers plan and buyers budget. Over time, they became tools for financial profit detached from physical food. Large volumes of money move in and out of these markets seeking returns. These movements can drive price swings unrelated to actual supply. When prices spike, families in poor regions are forced to spend more on food or go without. When prices fall sharply, farmers lose income and abandon production. Both outcomes increase hunger over time. The logic of banking treats volatility as opportunity. Risk can be hedged, traded, and monetized. For those who eat last, volatility is disaster. A household budget cannot hedge against sudden price jumps. A child cannot delay growth until markets stabilize. The distance between trading floors and dinner tables hides the consequences of these financial games. Currency dynamics further illustrate how banks influence hunger. When capital flows out of a country, its currency weakens. Imports become more expensive. Many countries rely on imported food due to earlier shifts toward export crops. A weaker currency means immediate price increases. Wages rarely keep pace. Hunger rises without any change in harvest size. Banks that move capital across borders do not see this hunger. They see charts and returns. Urbanization has also been shaped by finance. Large-scale agricultural projects funded by banks reduce labor needs through mechanization. Rural workers migrate to cities in search of income. In cities, food must be purchased rather than grown. Survival becomes dependent on steady cash flow. When economic shocks occur, such as job loss or inflation, hunger spreads rapidly. The old rural safety nets are gone, replaced by market dependence. Even food aid has been influenced by banking logic. Emergency assistance often arrives as part of financial agreements. Aid may be tied to future trade concessions or policy changes. Imported food can undermine local farmers by flooding markets with free or subsidized goods. Short-term hunger relief creates long-term dependency. The underlying financial structures remain unchanged. It is tempting to imagine hunger as a failure of logistics or charity. In reality, it is a predictable outcome of systems that prioritize return on investment over nourishment. Banks do not set out to starve people. They operate within rules that reward profit and punish patience. When these rules govern food, the result is exclusion. The moral distance embedded in banking is crucial. Decisions are made far from their human impact. A loan default is a statistic. A land acquisition is a transaction. A price spike is a market signal. Nowhere in these abstractions is there room for hunger as lived experience. Responsibility dissolves across layers of institutions until no one feels accountable. This distance allows the story of scarcity to persist. Hunger is blamed on population growth, climate, or culture. These factors matter, but they do not explain why food rots in storage while people starve nearby. They do not explain why farmers who grow food go hungry themselves. Finance provides the missing explanation. Climate change intensifies these dynamics. Extreme weather increases risk in agriculture. Banks respond by tightening credit or raising costs. Those least able to adapt are cut off first. Resilience investments are underfunded because they yield slow returns. Short-term profitability wins over long-term food security. As climate shocks grow more frequent, this pattern ensures that hunger will grow with them. Large agribusiness firms benefit from this environment. They have access to capital, insurance, and political influence. Banks view them as stable partners. Small producers are seen as risky. Yet small producers supply a significant share of the world food consumed locally. When they disappear, food systems lose diversity and flexibility. Monocultures dominate. Vulnerability increases. The language of efficiency often hides these costs. Financial efficiency values scale, speed, and standardization. Food systems require care, diversity, and local knowledge. When finance dictates agriculture, efficiency is measured in output per dollar rather than nourishment per person. Hunger becomes an externality rather than a failure. Some argue that banks simply respond to demand and policy. This ignores the power banks hold in shaping both. Through lending, lobbying, and expertise, they influence what is considered sensible or inevitable. Food systems are designed within these constraints. Alternatives exist but are marginalized as unrealistic or unprofitable. Community-based finance offers one such alternative. Local banks and cooperatives that understand regional conditions can provide patient credit aligned with harvest cycles. Interest structures can reflect shared risk rather than extraction. Where such models operate, farmers invest in soil health, water management, and food crops. Hunger declines not through charity but through stability. Public investment is another path. When states support food production and distribution as public goods, markets can function without excluding the poor. Price stabilization, storage reserves, and school feeding programs all reduce hunger. These require funding that competes with debt repayment. Banks often frame such spending as inefficiency. The human outcomes tell a different story. Ethical finance movements also challenge the idea that profit must come first. They argue that food is foundational to all other economic activity. Without nourishment there is no labor, no growth, no stability. Finance that undermines food security ultimately undermines itself. This logic struggles to gain ground in systems designed around quarterly returns. To say that banks have starved the world is not to claim that hunger is the goal of finance. It is to recognize that hunger has been accepted as collateral damage. The rules of banking were written without hunger at the center. As long as this remains true, abundance will coexist with deprivation. History shows that systems can change. Banking has evolved before in response to crisis. Hunger is a slow crisis that rarely threatens financial centers directly. Its victims are distant and quiet. Bringing hunger into the financial conversation requires insisting that food is not just another commodity. It is life itself. The world today stands at a crossroads. Technological capacity could end hunger. Financial capacity could support that goal. The barrier is not knowledge but priority. Banks help decide priorities through what they fund and what they refuse. When they choose extraction over nourishment, hunger follows. Ultimately, hunger reveals the values embedded in our systems. A world that allows food to be withheld through financial mechanisms has chosen abstraction over humanity. Reversing this choice does not require eliminating banks. It requires redefining their role. Finance must serve life rather than the reverse. Until that shift occurs, hunger will remain a feature of global order rather than an accident. Fields will produce, ships will sail, markets will trade, and somewhere nearby, someone will go to sleep hungry in a world that had more than enough.